Do you feel that after a noisy day, your body seems to contract, yet there remains a reserve of strength inside that you can't quite access? This is how hidden potential works. It doesn't disappear. It waits until you stop living on autopilot and see where your energy is leaking. By the end of the video, you will understand why this is not about weakness of character, but about a state in which you have been held for too long, and what changes when you stop giving yourself away to everyone. Very often, a person thinks they simply lack the necessary strength, courage, or talent. But the problem runs deeper and is simultaneously simpler. Your energy may not be broken, but frozen in a state of constant vigilance. When there is no sense of safety inside, the brain doesn't let you fully unfold, even if opportunities are already present. You may want more, you may see a new level ahead, but everything inside seems to hit the brakes because too many years have been spent on survival, on adjustment, on keeping yourself within boundaries that have long since become cramped. This is why it's so easy to confuse your true ceiling with a temporary protection. You start to believe that limitation is your nature, although in reality, it is just a habit of living in a contracted state. The most important thing here is that potential unfolds not in a burst or with a beautiful promise to oneself, but through returning to oneself, to a more sober choice, to paying attention to what fills you up and what subtly drains your strength. Further, you will see how to understand that what holds you back is not a lack of abilities, but a habit of scattering attention and adapting to someone else's noise. This knowledge changes a lot, because then you stop looking for the problem in your worth and begin to see where exactly you can free up space for new energy. The topic is particularly important right now, because many live as if they are constantly caught between obligations, notifications, and others' expectations. Externally, it appears as ordinary busyness, while internally, a strange state emerges where a person no longer understands where their own rhythm is and where the imposed one begins. Because of this, even a good day can feel heavy, and a simple task can seem like yet another load on an already overloaded mind. This video is precisely for restoring clarity. You won't hear any beautiful platitudes about believing in yourself here, because that doesn't work when everything inside is crumbling from excess noise. It's more important to see how this scenario is structured from within, why it keeps a person in a compressed state for so long, and how to exit it without violence against oneself. Once the mechanism becomes clear, unnecessary confusion fades away, along with the habit of considering oneself lost. Next comes the main part, where it will be shown why energy does not go into growth, but into constant dispersion. After that, we will move on to practical application so that you can not only understand the topic, but also start noticing where in your life excess tension arises and how to gently make space for a more collected state. In the end, everything will boil down to a simple but important conclusion that strength returns not when you push harder on yourself, but when you stop feeding what has been taking your resources for years. There is another nuance that is rarely noticed right away. A person does not lose energy just because of tasks. They lose it due to a constant internal readiness to react to everything. Digital noise, others' emotions, endless comparisons, and the need to be constantly connected create a background where one's own desires become too quiet. This is why it is so easy to live many years without truly understanding what you really want. This video will help not only to see the reason, but also to feel what a more collected, calm, and vibrant state looks like when you stop giving yourself away completely. Energy does not diminish because there is little of it, but because it is constantly spent on holding on to excess. A person often thinks they are tired from work, but the body shows otherwise. Shoulders are raised, jaws clenched, gaze is glued to the screen, and inside there is a quiet check going on, as if something is still expected from them. In this mode, even a free evening does not become a rest, because part of the attention remains on alert, as if they will be called again, asked for something, evaluated, or forced to explain. And here arises a false belief, which is easy to believe, that the problem lies in weak willpower. It seems that if you were more collected, disciplined, braver, you would have long lived differently. But this is incorrect. Very often, the will is not weak. It is simply occupied with constant defense. When a person lives too long among expectations, criticism, haste, and others' moods, Their system begins to save not strength, but risk. They do not move forward not because they cannot, but because they have developed a habit of not sticking out. This is particularly noticeable in little things. A leader who can handle everything on their own suddenly postpones an important conversation not out of laziness, but because they feel tension in their chest in advance and do not want to enter into someone else's reaction again. Or a person who dreams of a new venture scrolls through the feed again and loses the evening, although they perfectly understand that they do not want this. Outwardly, this looks like procrastination, but inside, a different mechanism often works. The brain chooses the familiar because the familiar requires no internal rearrangement. The biggest trap here is that a person confuses scattering with living. When there are too many people, tasks, opinions, and irritants around, there is a feeling of movement. But this is not always movement forward. Sometimes it is just a constant tossing between signals. Then, energy does not accumulate in one vector, but breaks down into small responses. And the more such responses, the stronger the feeling that there is nothing left for oneself. Thus, a new perspective here is simple but very uncomfortable. Potential is not hidden somewhere apart from you. It often lies beneath a layer of others' noise. There is no need to search for another missing part within yourself when, in fact, you need to remove everything that suppresses your own impulse. At some point, a person begins to see that it was not themselves who were empty, but their attention was too often occupied with what does not concern them at all. Imagine a day when you have already replied to several messages in the morning, listened to someone else's anxiety, got caught up in work hustle, and by lunch, you feel heaviness in your temples. You have not done anything extraordinary, but inside you have seemingly lived half a day at someone else's pace. Now compare this to the moment when you enter silence after a long tension. At first it feels unfamiliar, then your breathing stabilizes, and only then you realize how much energy was spent not on deeds, but on constant reactions. That is why hidden energy often returns not at the moment when you push yourself, but when you stop giving your inner resource to everything indiscriminately. Not to everything that is louder, not to everything that is more urgent, not to everything that has long demanded your presence. At this moment, sobriety emerges, and along with it, the ability to choose. And choice is no longer chaotic movement, but the first form of collected strength. Do one very short test right now. For 60 seconds, simply remove everything unnecessary from your attention and keep your gaze on one object nearby, noticing not the object itself, but how your body stops being in constant readiness. This small action works better than a big plan because hidden potential doesn't activate through promises. It activates when the nervous system receives the first signal that it doesn't have to react to everything. On a regular day, it appears almost imperceptibly. You open a conversation, see another request, internally already preparing to respond quickly and without pause. But instead, you stop for a second and redirect your attention to what you are doing right now. Not to someone else's tempo, but to your own action. In that moment, your shoulders often drop by themselves, your breath becomes deeper, and there appears space in your mind between impulse and reaction. It is in that gap that the return of power begins. The most common mistake here is that a person tries to change their entire life at once, although the resource is lost in small automations. You recognize this by two signs. One is that you feel as if you are in a rush all day, even when you are objectively not late for anything. The second is that after socializing or using a screen, there remains a sense of internal clutter, as if your day didn't belong to you completely. The solution is not in harsh control, but in one simple decision to regain micro moments of attention where you are usually carried away by inertia. How to integrate this into chaos is best understood at work or on the road. While conversations, notifications, and movement are happening around you, try for 60 seconds to slowly feel your feet in your shoes and the support underneath them, without changing your facial expression and without drawing attention. Externally, it looks like a regular pause, but internally, you notice how the extra tension leaves your jaw. Your palms become less stiff, and your chest stops being tight. This unnoticed practice is needed not for aesthetics, but so that your system, at least for a minute, stops living in a mode of constant response. If you do this once a day, at first it will seem like nothing special is happening. But then you will start to notice that you choose silence more often instead of unnecessary noise. You do not engage in every other person's emotion, and you find it easier to separate the important from the random. Power returns not when you become louder, but when you stop dispersing on everything that used to automatically consume you entirely. Your energy did not disappear. It was too busy protecting, adjusting, and responding unnecessarily for too long. When this becomes apparent, the view of oneself changes. You stop perceiving fatigue as a verdict and begin to understand that much within you has simply been waiting for a safer space to move forward again. This is the main shift in theme, not seeking the missing strength within, but stopping the flow of it to places where it shouldn't go. Another important thing is that growth almost never starts with a leap. It begins with a choice of what no longer has the right to overwhelm your inner noise. Then, clarity emerges, and along with it comes a more collected rhythm, where there is no need to prove to yourself the right to move forward. You simply start to discern more clearly what expands you and what contracts you back to the familiar size. And there is a moment that many notice too late. Freedom within is not a vivid state, but an ordinary ability to not betray yourself in small things. Tomorrow, this may seem very simple, without loud decisions and great drama. You will wake up and for the first time in a long time, will be able to not adjust from the first seconds, but choose where your day will go. This is where the return to oneself begins. If this video was helpful to you, subscribe so you don't miss the next day.